signed by the President and the Chancellor. Congratulations. He's Mayor of Dallas. His brothers have had distinguished careers, and so this is just a little appreciation to you.
And a man of that type, we call him a statesman. He's
knowledge to the Library of Southern Methodist University, and SMU will benefit in the future from these papers.
Pioneer sheriff here, and was the great sheriff in so many ways, was also mayor. And so when Earl was mayor and later served for such a long stretch in Congress,
that is, we don't expect you to do all the legislating, but just to give us the fundamental, workable baselines from which our government will function.
After lip service to writing a constitution stating broad public policy by leadoff witness Dallas County Commissioner John Whittington, the Constitutional Revision Commission was immediately hit with all the special interest requests. In fact, as an example, Whittington and Dallas City Attorney Alex Bickley immediately disagreed over how much power should be given to city governments and how much should be reserved for county governments.
That this should be made very plain in the Constitution, that home rule means home rule, and only those things that are denied to the city should be disallowed to them. They should be allowed to exercise all of the rights of government necessary to render the services to their people. The Urban Development Commission explicitly recognized the importance of county government in the overall governmental system in Texas. In order that county government might be strengthened, the UDC made several recommendations for new constitutional authority.
Texas has been able to get the farmer out of the mud and build first-class highways for both rural and urban areas without sacrificing environmental beauty and traffic safety for speed and convenience. For road support, we honestly believe there is no other way to keep the economy of this country rolling.
And I submit that these should be provisions in our Constitution for the continued election of our judiciary, for the continuation of our justice courts. Our Constitution should guarantee the right to work. It should guarantee that local officials continue to be elected officials. And with reference to taxes, our Constitution should prohibit any form of an income tax. It should prohibit the state from utilizing an ad valorem tax.
We do not need to rewrite the state constitution. All that is needed is to repeal a host of laws written for the benefit of special interests.
This is the 7th of nearly 20 hearings scheduled by these commission members. Then comes the lengthy, controversial, and tedious task of actually writing a proposed constitution, and that has to be done by November so that the legislature can take over and finish the job next year. This is Roger McDonald, Channel 8 News on the Move in Arlington.
On April the 17th, the Army announced it was putting Fort Walters on a caretaker status. That means a skeleton crew of 129 will take the place of the current 2,536 military and civilian personnel, and it will dry up what would have been a payroll this year of $32 million into Mineral Wells. This week, Mineral Wells officials called the closing economic rape military style. They say the Army has broken a promise that Walters would always be there, that it was a permanent installation. What does the business leadership of Mineral Wells want? Chamber of Commerce Manager Buddy Byers speaks to that.
Well, we certainly don't want it in caretaker status.
How would you get it out of caretaker status?
Well, that's one of the $64 questions, but it's going to be a lot of hard work by everyone here in Mineral Wells and in the whole community all the way to Washington. But we're going to, let's say, if we can't keep it open, we're going to do our best to get it out of caretaker status and put it to use in some sort.
Fort Walters was the largest infantry replacement training center in World War II, and part of the old Confidence training course still stands. but it's back off in the bushes and not visible to the casual visitor. What is obvious is that Walters is for all practical purposes a city unto itself, with its own fire station and fire trucks, its own hospital with a 200-bed capacity and employing 156 people, its own park with playground equipment and a swimming pool, and its own office buildings and classrooms. Walters reached its peak during the Vietnam buildup in 1968 and 1969, when there was an average in-student load of over 3,000 students. During that peak, the annual payroll went as high as $130 million, and there were as many as 1,300 aircraft located on base. There are now about 500 students and about 200 aircraft. More than half of the students are trained by Southern Airways under a contract to the Army. The 655 Southern employees have no civil service job protection. Keith Simon, Director of Flight Training, tells what will happen to the Southern personnel after the last class graduates November the 15th.
Well, I'm sure everybody's going to be looking for a job. I mean, if they get a chance for one that is even reasonable.
What about yourself with Southern? You've been with them a long time. Is your job in jeopardy?
Oh, yes. When it ceases here, why, unless we should get another contract.
Where do you plan on going?
I don't know yet. I mean, I'm looking.
The effect of the closing goes all the way down to Southern's laborers, people like Claude Green. What are you going to do when they close this place?
Go back cooking, I guess.
Is that what you were before you went to work there?
Yeah, I worked 7 years over there in the mess house.
You're non-civil service, right?
Right.
So you have to look for a job where you can find it?
Right.
You think there's employment here in this area, Mineral Wells area?
Not too much. Not that will pay you any money.
Fort Walters has been the heart of Mineral Wells for more than 50 years, and now it's going into mothballs. It's being closed in such a way that it can be reactivated within any given 30-day period, but that's not likely to happen. Primary helicopter training, which goes on here, is being moved to Fort Rucker, Alabama. So Fort Walters will become a ghost town with ghost barracks, ghost classrooms, a ghost hospital, ghost helicopter. John Tackett, Channel 8 News on the Move, Fort Walters, Texas.
It just doesn't seem to me that marijuana possession is the drug problem. The scientific evidence doesn't support it. I've never used marijuana. I don't intend to, and I hope my children don't. But that is really beside the point. The fact is, about 10% of the people in this country do use marijuana.
You know, as often as we've had you on the air this week, it ought to be the Bruce Crampton program. You want to interview me for a change?
Well, I don't know. I enjoy hearing Murphy and Bob interview you. You know, you all have so much fun down there, and as a viewer, I can tell you, you know, it's good to listen to a newscast like that where you enjoy it, and it gives a little lighter side, and I enjoy listening just to see what you're going to say to each other.
Well, we've been
He put it on you last night, didn't he?
Every night, it seems. We've been talking about you for about 3 weeks now, Bruce. You had another fine round today.
Thanks, Vern. Yes, another rewarding day. I drove it just a little off the fairway a few times today, not badly, but just enough to be in the colonial rough that we know so much about over here. But if there was a feature of today's round, I think it'd have to be my recovery shots, both out of the rough onto the green, and I hit some good shots out of the fairway traps again today, and a couple of good shots out of greenside bunkers too. So probably the strongest part of my game today was the good recovery shots that I was able to hit.
Were you more satisfied on the whole with yesterday's round than you were today?
Well, certainly. I was 3 shots lower yesterday.
That's a stupid question. I deserve that kind.
You know, I putted exceptionally well out there, Vern. By far the best putting round of this year for me. And I did have a makeable birdie putt on the last hole and hit a good putt, but I made a lot of good putts.
Were they exceptionally long, or did you have to play the breaks just right, or what?
Yes, there was quite a few good long putts.
You know?
I have been a vendor of prime contractors and governmental agencies for many years in my own personal business, and these clauses are all printed on the back of the purchase orders, and when I receive one in my own place of business, when I start working on this order, I have automatically certified that I will comply with all the federal, state, and local laws, and fair employment happens to be one of them.
Do you see then that if it's made an extra certification paper, that it would cost the city more to handle that paper?
Yes, depending on whether we had it in duplicate, triplicate, or quadruplicate, that would mean that many more files of extra piece of paper laying around and that many more people to shuffle paper.
The mayor feels that the city council will agree with his suggestion, since it will save the city money and man hours. However, concerning the ordinance as a whole, many of the members of the council agree with Councilman John O'Neill. He feels that it will be so difficult for small businessmen to meet the requirements of the ordinance that they will no longer care to submit bids for city work. The matter will surely be discussed in further detail this Monday at council meeting. Jim Green, Channel 8 News on the Move in Fort Worth.
Things to
shoot a little, kind of get started.
That's
also next week sometime, and weather permitting, we will have a soil cross country.
has had to convince them that the law in the first place was a mistake. I've yet to find a person who abused drugs in order to
protected them against diseases and immunities and
color of marijuana are more serious. And I'm told by those with experience that this can run from $3,000 up.
Oh, he had a good one. He gonna stay with you? Yeah, he's right out in the middle. Here she comes.
Good place, Clover.
Come on, man.
Good angle there, you know?
Didn't put any pressure on any part of my game. I played well in spots, and I played kind of conservative, and I had some good shots, and there was nothing that really worried me. I was never, I was in complete control today.
Well, you played pretty well over at the Byron Nelson in Dallas. How do you feel like your game's going right now? Are you satisfied with your game?
Yes, I feel like I got to work on my game at the Byron Nelson, which is really the first time I've had a chance to work on it all year. And I did play a good tournament, was in position to maybe have a chance to win there, and then I made double bogeys back-to-back on two bad drives and poor thinking, and just the thought of maybe having a chance to win and not having played well up until that time. I think it was a combination of things. Then I went down to Houston. I didn't play well there. It had nothing to do with the golf course, as some people thought it was a bad golf course. Of course, the greens weren't that good, but I did work on my game there, and I came here early after I had missed the cut and worked very hard Saturday and Sunday and Monday and Tuesday. So I've been working harder probably than I ever have, and I'm going to start to take this game a little more serious, I think, than I have in the past, too.
Fracture here covering the Constitution.
And I think it's a good thing that the President is trying to set up a commission now to study ways of getting around this. I hope he succeeds in it.
So you're saying the fault is not in ourselves, but rather it's in our system?
Oh, no, I'm not saying that at all. The fault is always in ourselves. The individual always has a responsibility. But I think that we can create a system in which the opportunities for fraud, the opportunities for deception, the opportunities for cheating will be far less.
Well, we have had many witnesses before this commission that testify. Now, we need a broad general document. You need to cut out all this verbiage and then put this in it, and they'll bring up a new provision. If we put in all the new provisions, not now in the Constitution that somebody wants, it'd be even longer than the present one, which is about 150 pages and basically a legislative constitution instead of a government framework constitution.
A member of this commission told me that this group could sit down and write a good constitution today without having to suffer all the arguments of all the special interest groups. But he said, that's just not the way it's done. This is Roger McDonald, Channel 8 News on the Move.
And with the cities within the county, I think that regional
not the easiest kind of schedule, but unfortunately for me. But sometimes when you're tired, you know, you kind of go out there and you just kind of try to swing the racket around, and that's about the way it happened today. Rod, of course, lost a bit of confidence on, you know, the way he's played under these conditions, not taking anything away from Stan the way he played last night. But so, because Rod was probably tired too, but he's, you know, just kind of was all at sea, really. But fortunately, I hit the ball well, and that's most times when I was on the ball, I hit it fairly well.
I like to jog here in Dallas because Cooper, Ken Cooper. I haven't. I'm a trust.
This length, okay, and
Charles, come visit us.
Under the heading of things one didn't know were important to know is how one introduces 10 full-grown rhinoceros to their new home. First, you take a dozen or so strong, brave men and one very large crane to unload the very strong boxes of white rhino. Together with those already living in lion country, the largest herd of white rhino outside of Africa now lives outside of Grand Prairie. Next, you add a doctor with a syringe almost as big as he is to inject the 300-pound beast with penicillin. You wait an hour or so for the big girls and boys to calm down a bit, and then, here's that word again, you carefully introduce them to the wide open spaces. White rhino, you can tell even if your television set is not in color, are not white. Seems the name comes from a Dutch word which means big mouth, and it got mispronounced along the way. The most exciting thing about the white rhino, the officials told me, other than the fact they're being saved from being killed in Africa, is that they're of breeding age, as if 35